Welcome to the Cultivating You podcast with Anthony Duane.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's episode of Cultivating You podcast. I am your host, Anthony Duane, and today I'm going to be talking about a topic that is very near and dear to my heart. That topic is going to be microdosing. And you may ask, Anthony, why is microdosing so near and dear to your heart? Or you may ask, Anthony, what is microdosing? And to which I would respond, have you been living under a rock? Seriously, have you not been paying attention to the psychedelic renaissance that has been unfolding before our eyes? No? Well, no worries. That's why I'm here. And today, I really want to get into this subject because it's something that has changed my life in a very positive way. Now, microdosing is the act of ingesting psychedelic substances, very small amounts of psychedelic substances, typically LSD and psilocybin, or magic mushrooms. So today we're going to be focusing on psilocybin because I've never used LSD for microdosing, so I don't really want to speak on that. They may have similarities, they may have little differences, so I don't want to get into the nuances of those. So we'll just focus on magic mushrooms today, okay? Now, the reason that microdosing is very near and dear to my heart is because I used them at one point to, really help me with a bout of, depression and anxiety and, a dark night of the soul, if you will. And they really helped bring me out of that, in a very rapid and great way. It was actually a beautiful process. And, people use it for a lot of different reasons. It's not just mental health. I know people who use it to boost creativity. I know people who use it to boost production in the workplace. I know people who use it for pain management, which kind of blew my mind when I found out somebody had kind of cured a neck pain that they had been dealing with psilocybin mushrooms. Because to me, it was like counterintuitive. It was like if you have an injury or a pain or something and you take this psychoactive substance, that would almost like exacerbate it and make you want to focus on it. And I've actually had that experience, in larger doses with back pain, that it would just made it very uncomfortable and made the whole experience just very bad. But with microdosing, this sub-perceptual dose, this very small dose of psychedelics and putting an intention behind it, it actually helped them out quite a bit. So these are things that we're going to be getting into today. And, before we do really get into the meat and potatoes of this stuff, I just want to put out a disclaimer out there because, for one, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical professional. I do not want to have this mistaken as me giving medical advice. These substances are illegal. They're illegal to possess. They're illegal to grow. And I do not, recommend anybody go out and pursue this, take these chemicals. This video is basically just going to be for harm reduction. I know that people out there, they're going to do it anyway. It's out there and they're going to get their hands on it and they're going to do it regardless. So I just want to be able to have some information here, be a source of information so that people can do it correctly if they do happen to be doing it. And that we, harm reduction, like I said, do it the right way, because you don't want these psychedelic substances can have just as much of a harmful effect on you as they can a positive one, so don't play around with these substances, and it's illegal, so don't do it. All right. Well, that's my little spiel for that. Okay. But so I guess I'll kind of get into a little bit of my background with microdosing and what kind of led me to that. So I'll be very transparent with you. I was at a point in time in my life where I really thought about doing harm to myself. I really did. And, I'm not super proud of that, but it is what it is. It happened. And I don't like to really focus on those things anymore. I don't like to focus on the negative of the past, because I think that's kind of a lot of what depression is, right? It's kind of like ruminating on past events and wishing they could have gone better, and wishing that things turned out differently, and this and that. And it kind of gets you in this really stuck place. It's almost like, it triggers this response in us. It's like this fight or flight response, but instead of fleeing or fighting, we freeze and we get stuck in these places. And so the, mental health is very serious, and it's nothing to, joke about or anything like that. But if you are going through a dark period, a dark time in your life, I just want to let you know that we can get into these really dark places, and we can feel like there's no way out. I feel like that's what made me want to harm myself, was just the idea that this was not going to go away. I'd felt so bad for so long, and it just felt like it was going to continue to keep going like this. And what kind of life would that be with feeling like this? That was not acceptable to me. I'd rather not be here if this is the way I have to feel for the rest of my life. And luckily I found my way out of that. I found other outlets. I found other routes to take to help alleviate my, mental distress at those times. And that's what I want to convey to other people, is that if you are in a very, very down place, there is a way out. Have hope. There is. And there's probably some route that you have not tried. There's probably something that you have not done or even heard about that will help you along in this process of healing trauma, whatever it is that you're going through and suffering through. So just know that there is a way, and I'm here to help. There's a lot of people that are out there to help. So make sure you reach out. Okay. But yeah, I was in my own little world at one point, and it was kind of towards the end of my firefighting career, my wildland firefighting career. There was a lot of stresses going on, and there was, my wife, Crystal, she had just had our first son. He was, running around, and I think she actually had Roman, our second son, in the oven cooking up, and I was out firefighting, and I'd be gone. I'd be far. I'd be 2,000-3,000 miles away sometimes, other side of the country, fighting fire. And so it was very stressful. If anything ever happened, it wasn't just like I could, leave the fire and go to my house or go to the hospital or whatever happened. It was like I had to get on a plane. I had to either drive back, and it was a process, and so that was always pretty stressful. And then around the same time, my mother, God bless her, who is a saint, at that time she was going through a very, very, she was in the throes of a bout with addiction, and to be quite honest with you, during that period where I was firefighting, there was a couple of times where she should have died. Like, she should not be here. And that was very scary and unnerving for me, and I felt very helpless a lot of the time because of that. And luckily and thankfully, she is well out of that. She is thriving now. She's on her own. She's been sober for, I want to say, a good 5 years now, at least. She's overcome a lot of things, and I'm very proud of her. So, and she even has dealt with a lot of this stuff too, and so I'm very proud of her. But at the time, it was just a lot. It was just a lot. So I decided, after that last fire season, I'm gonna come home, and I'm gonna get, I'm gonna get a job closer to home. Maybe try and get on with the fire department in the city, and get closer to home, so that it kind of alleviates some of the stress. So I did that, and what ended up happening is I just ended up becoming like a stay-at-home dad for the next year. And that was really crazy, just because that threw me for a loop. I didn't expect. I thought it was going to be nice and everything was going to be chill again. And the total opposite happened, because what happened is, like, I went from this very high stress environment, firefighting, where, it was fire all around you, and it was chainsaws, and, trees would fall on people. A top of a tree fell out one time, hit this guy on the leg, broke his femur. And we had 3 crews had to take turns carrying him through the mountains for like a mile to this helispot. And we had to be very careful, because we could see his femur like popping up through the skin, like it was snapped in half. So we had to be very careful. And it was just a very intense situation, because, if that femur severs that artery right there, you could bleed out like within minutes. So stuff like that would happen. Guy cut his leg with the chainsaw. His whole leg was ripped open. We had to get him to a helispot before. We even got chased out by a fire one time, about 1.5 miles. Like, I just remember looking up, nothing but smoke, and then you just hear this like train coming behind you. And over the radios, they're just like, drop your shit and run. And we ran to our buggies, and then we bugged out to this little safe zone where we essentially waited it out and watched the fire kind of roll around us. So, very, very intense situations. And I'm not going to compare it to the military, because the military has its own very intense situations, which are probably far more visceral and things like that. But it was kind of like that. Like, I leave that environment and I come home, and then I'm just kind of sitting at the house and taking care of this, fragile little baby. And, I wasn't working. I mean, I had a little bit of money saved up, but, I wasn't working. So for me, like, as a man, like, I felt like I had no purpose, and it was just a lot of turmoil going on. And throughout that year, I got really down. I had it bad. And, luckily I came out of it through, starting to exercise, and I started distance running, and running really, really helped me out. And that brings me to a good point, is before you really start to think about microdosing and jumping into a microdosing protocol, especially if it's for mental health, please do myself and yourself a favor and try a natural, holistic route before trying to intervene with any like compounds or anything like that. Because there's a few things you can do that can, if you're not doing them, that can really help your mental health. And those things are eating a balanced, like, healthy whole food diet, drinking a lot of water, exercising, getting your body moving, and sleeping well. Sleeping well is something that many people overlook. But if you're staying up all night and you're sleeping all day, and your circadian rhythm is off, and these hormones that should be flooding your system at night while you're sleeping are not doing that, and you're always tired, like, that's going to be huge. So, if you can kind of get these 3 or 4 things dialed in, you could probably bring your discomfort level down from a 9 to a 4 just by simply doing those things. You know what I'm saying? And then, if you still need that little bit of extra kick, that, not a kick, but like that alleviation of the symptoms that you're looking for, then microdosing might be of help for sure. But like, exercise is huge. You get the body moving. If you've never heard of ecstatic dance, try some ecstatic dance. It's really fun, and it's very cathartic, and it's very like releasing. Lock yourself in your bedroom. Nobody's home. Turn on a weird, wild song, and just move your body and jump around and get crazy, like, without fear of any judgment, and make weird noises and make animal noises and shit. It's like, just get out of your brain and out of your body, and like, get that energy released. And so these things will help out quite a bit. Okay. But yes, so with the microdosing, all right, there's a few things that I would like to get into before we talk about the protocols. So I would say, for one, you're going to want to get a journal, okay? You're going to want to get a journal, and you got to think about this as kind of doing an experiment on yourself. And you're going to use this journal to document the whole process. And you're going to document where you're at from the beginning, and for however long you decide to microdose. For me, the first time that I decided to microdose, I decided to do it for 1 month, and I documented that, and I have my journal actually right here, and I'm going to read a bit from it just so that you have a good idea about how you can start with your journal. So let's see. All right, so the first thing I have here is my intentions for microdosing, okay? So before you start, figure out what it is you want to accomplish through microdosing, okay? Maybe it is a creative boost in your artwork or your music. Maybe it's a little bit more production at work. Again, make these things known, write them down, and say them aloud, you know, especially when you're taking the microdose. State that intention out loud. And I'll even just go over mine with you, okay? So my intentions for microdosing were, I want to be more mentally robust and confident in my actions. I want to feel more joy every day. I want to clear my mind and quit ruminating on negative thoughts. I want to be courageous and bold in my actions. I want to be a better leader, father, husband, son, and friend. I want to overcome fear. I want to overcome depression and anxiety. I want to become the strongest version of myself. I want to have more fun every day. You know, so these are the things that I was putting down on paper. Like, this is what I want. These are the things that are lacking in my life. And this is what is going to help me out and what's going to move me forward. Okay. That's what's going to move the needle for sure. All right. And yeah, so intentions, super important. And the other thing with the intentions, you're going to want to, and we'll get into dosage and when to take everything in a few minutes here. But when you do have that all dialed in and you're ready to go, make sure you're stating that intention as you're taking the medicine. And that's just going to reinforce that. Okay. So another thing that I did is, before I started, is I wrote down my homeostasis. That's what I called it right here. So this was actually taken in 2019, 10/17/19. So this has actually been about 3 years since I did this, and probably about 3 years since I actually looked at this notebook. So that's pretty cool. But I wrote these down. It's my current state, and on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being poor, 5 being great, I gauged myself on these overall aspects. So I wrote down mental clarity, my overall well-being, my happiness, my anxiety level, my confidence, rumination, my truthfulness, and for me that was like speaking my mind, my introversion, my extroversion, how much fun I'm having, I called it a fun factor, and my discipline. Now, I rated all of these on a scale of between 1 and 5. And I did use decibels on a few of them. It looks like, one of them I put 2.5. So I just tried to gauge my current level, where I'm at. And that's my starting point, right? And so that after this month long that I decided to microdose, I'm going to go and I'm going to revisit all of these things, and I'm going to give myself a new value for each one. And hopefully that ticked up a little bit. Hopefully I'll be doing better. And yeah, so that's what I did. And yeah, so through the journaling, basically I wrote this down as concise as I could. So I started basically on day 1, week 1, I'd write that down. I write down my dose. For me, I started off at 0.19 grams. And I also incorporated 550 milligrams of lion's mane and 100 milligrams of niacin. Now, I was doing the Stamets protocol. And of the protocols, there's going to be 2 of them that I talk about. So it's the James Fadiman protocol and the Paul Stamets protocol. And I'll be going over both of those here pretty quickly. So I wrote that down, I wrote the dosage down, and I wrote at approximately what time in the morning I took it. And so let's just pick one of these and just kind of read them and see what happened that day. All right. So Day 1, week 2, took the dose at 8:45 a.m., 0.19 grams of psilocybin, 225 milligrams lion's mane, 100 milligrams of niacin. The niacin was rough. I really had to dial that back because the flush was pretty intense. So let's see. Even with the food, the flush is very strong. It only lasts about 10 minutes though. The morning was good. I woke up in good humor, even though I only got about 4 hours of sleep. We took Roman to the dentist. I took my dose in the waiting area after a banana. The onset was very serene and quiet. To backtrack a little, I remember thinking that I didn't want to take today's dose because I woke up feeling so great, that I didn't want to alter that. But I did it for the sake of science. While Crystal was with Roman, I took a walk down the street about 2 or 3 blocks, then wandered back. I really enjoyed being in the sun while microdosing. I just enjoy being outside in general. Normally, I would have just sat in the waiting room and stared at my phone. What I really enjoy about microdosing is the depatterning it allows for. We are creatures of habit, and sometimes the reason we are in a rut is because we are caught up in this loop of behavior that we've become accustomed to, and it's hard to get out of that pattern. Mushrooms help you get out of that pattern and allow you to experience brain changes due to the new scenery. And it can be something as simple as taking a new route to work or going for a walk, instead of sitting in a waiting room, zombied out, staring at your phone. One thing I also noticed was I wanted to feed into my indulgences and go out and eat and drink beer midday. I felt like I was trying to coerce Crystal into saying yes to day drinking so that it confirmed or justified it in my head. Luckily, she didn't feed into it, and I ended up going to the chiropractor, went home, went for a walk, cooked bacon and eggs, got a nap in, and before taking the kids to jiu-jitsu. When we got home, we ate dinner, and myself and Crystal went to the movies. When the night ended and I was laying in bed, I could still feel a vague buzzing through my whole body. These mushrooms are amazing. I've never felt this productive before. So wow, yeah, very cool reading that for me, honestly. And as you can tell, I was having a lot of insights, even just into the first week of microdosing. I was talking about the depatterning that was going on. And, that's very, very true. So like even in the sense of a macro dose of mushrooms, it's kind of like your brain is like firing and connecting all these pathways in your brain. And sometimes we become creatures of habit, right? We take the same route to work all the time. We eat the same thing. We do the same thing. And sometimes it almost feels like we become robotic, you know what I'm saying? Because we do what works for us. And that can just really lock us into this like loop feeling that is just kind of hard to get out of. And even on a large dose of mushrooms, that just kind of blows those patterns out of the water, and then slowly, everything kind of comes and falls back into place. But microdosing does the same thing, and that's why a lot of the time it has really profound effects on your mental state and the things that you do, and it just kind of knocks you out of these patterns. Like I remember the first day that I microdosed, I was like, I'm gonna go for a walk around my neighborhood, and I did, and I just remember going and walking to this different park that I'd never really been to, and noticing a bunch of things, and everything was just really calm and serene, and everything was brighter, and it's really an awesome experience. That being said though, it's not for everybody. I have had a couple of friends who had very, very bad experiences on microdosing, like very small amounts. So, always move with caution with psychedelics, and just prepare yourself mentally. The day you start microdosing, definitely do that on a day where you have nothing going on. Do it on a day off where you have a lot of free time, and where you can kind of get a gauge for the feeling of it. Because I don't know if you read in the first entry that I put, I was at 550 milligrams of lion's mane, and in the first week I had dropped that down to 225 milligrams. And of the niacin, I had to drop that down because the flushes were so intense. I was just completely beet red and itching like crazy. And And I believe like now where I'm at zero point 0.08 grams of psilocybin rather than 0.19, which I started off with, which is almost double, and is not necessarily even considered a microdose. Like I remember being at work a few times and seeing like waves on my hand and like patterns and stuff. And like, that's not where you want to be. You definitely, especially if you're trying to treat anxiety, like you do not want to start seeing visuals in the middle of your workday. Like, no, you might end up wanting to go home really fast. So just be careful that when you do start this protocol or whatever protocol you choose, just make sure that you kind of planned it out and it's everything is ready to go. You know what I'm saying? So now let's get into the protocols. Okay. Protocols. This is basically, how much you're taking and how often you're taking it. Now, James Fadiman is credited for starting microdosing. And he talks about it in his book, The Psychedelic Explorer's Guide. And essentially, what he says is you want to take a subperceptual dose, which is about 1/10 of a gram of mushrooms, which would be 0.10 grams. And for everybody, this is going to be a little bit different, because we all have different sensitivities to things. And honestly, all psilocybin is not created equally. Some mushroom strains have more psilocybin per mushroom than others. So, like the penis envy mushroom is said to be twice as strong as the golden teacher. You know what I'm saying? So, you got to really make sure you're doing your homework, know what you're dealing with, the potency of it. And really there's a good saying that I learned in working for a marijuana dispensary. And that is, you can always take more, but you can't take less. So start off very low and work your way up. It may take you a few days to really dial it in, but the moment you start feeling anything that's the moment that your dose is a little bit too high. You want to keep it down. You shouldn't really be feeling any psychoactivity. If anything, you should be feeling maybe some clarity. Maybe colors are a little bit brighter. Maybe your mood is a little bit uplifted. Maybe you just feel a little bit more grounded, but you definitely shouldn't be kind of feeling buzzy or buzzed or anything like that. So, like I said, start at the lowest effective dose, and it may take you some time to actually find that. But back to the Fadiman protocol. So Fadiman protocol is going to be 1 day of microdosing, and then for the next successive 2 days, there's no dosing involved. And then on that 4th day, that'll be your next dose. So it's 1 day on, 2 days off. Okay. And the 2 days off are typically just meant for integration, right? The first day, microdosing can be very energizing. And I learned that very quickly. Microdosing can be very energizing, and it can actually deplete you of a lot of energy. And sometimes you wake up that next day and you have what's called an afterglow. And it's typically just kind of good feeling. You just have this sense of ease, but you could be also very tired. So it does take a little bit of time to recuperate. And so this protocol is actually what I would recommend for most people who are just starting out, just so you can have those 2 days break in between and kind of assess yourself. And then, on that 4th day, start back up again. Now, you want to do this for, I think the actual protocol recommends, maybe 4 to 8 weeks. And I did monitor myself for about a month in my notebook. But if I do remember correctly, I felt really good and I kept going without like the actual journaling and stuff. And I did it for about 5 or 6 months. And I just got to the point where I felt like I didn't need it anymore. Like it will take you to that. It will get you to a point where you're just kind of like, I don't want it. I'm like, I'm back, baby. It feels really good. So, there are some recommendations of taking it for only 4 to 6 weeks and giving yourself this integration period. And I think that is important. So, I'm a little bit more extreme. I started the Stamets protocol, and I was doing it 5 days in a row, at a dose that was probably double the recommended dose. So I was pretty desperate at the time. So I was like, we're going to crank this baby up. And it in hindsight, the first 2 weeks were pretty rough, and I'll explain that in a little bit, but start slow. Just start slow. So Fadiman protocol. Also with the Fadiman protocol, in the description of this video, I'm going to have a video where it's a very popular video put out by Dr. Fadiman, and it goes over the whole protocol so that you can find that video and you can kind of look at it and decide for yourself whether or not that's a good protocol for you. Now, the second protocol is the Stamets protocol, and this is the one that I did. And the Stamets protocol, if you don't know Paul Stamets is, he was in like Fantastic Fungi. He's a self-taught mycologist. He's probably one of the world-renowned, most knowledgeable mycologists out there, self-taught, really, really cool dude. But he says that so his protocol is actually a stack. It's not just taking psilocybin. And as I read earlier, I was taking lion's mane mushroom with my stack, and also niacin, which gives you that very flushed sensation, that flushed feeling. And the reason he adds lion's mane in is because lion's mane actually has neurogenetic properties. Maybe I'm saying that wrong, but essentially is it promotes the development of new brain cells, and new nerve endings, and new cells in general, which is quite amazing. It's quite an amazing thing. It's one of the only compounds we know that does that. At least one of the only mushrooms that we know that does that. And even if you look at the lion's mane mushroom, like when they're full and they're big, they kind of resemble a brain. And so he adds those into it. And the reason he adds niacin is because niacin flushes your body, right? It pushes it basically, it's taking the psilocybin and the lion's mane, and it's pushing it across the blood-brain barrier within your body, within your cells, and really pushing these properties and these compounds to the ends of the nerve endings, where it really promotes the neurogenesis and it promotes this growth of cells. And so that's the reason I chose to do this protocol, because it just sounded like it packed a little bit more of a punch, and it really did. And so the protocol for the Stamets is you're going to want to take your microdose 4 days a week, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you're going to take 3 days off. And I believe I started off going 5 days a week, and I'll tell you right now why that was kind of a bad idea. But so it's 4 days a week, 3 days off, and again, recommendation, 4 to 8 weeks, and then take off at least a month for that integration period. But again, like I said, I went for about 6 months, and the first day I took it on a day off, and so everything went good, and I was like, okay, next day I think I'm going to work today. I'm gonna take it at work. Everything went well. That first week that I took it went amazingly. Okay. All the way up until day 5. Now, everything went through the roof. My mood went through the roof. My production went through the roof. My energy went through the roof. It was crazy. I thought it was a miracle. I was like, there's nothing like this ever in the world. Like, how did this happen? It completely just turned everything around. And I was so active and productive for the first 4 days that on day 5, I woke up and I felt like I had run an Ironman triathlon. Like, I felt so depleted of energy. I had a headache. I was really down, and I had one of the worst days at work that I think I could remember in in the last 3 years or so. It was bad. Like I had no energy. I was depleted. So that's why, I recommend the Fatamin protocol with the 1 day on, 2 days off, and build up. Be like, if you want to start microdosing every day, but build up to it. Don't just start doing it like right off the rip 5 days a week like I did. I'm just trying to let you know from my experience, it was not fun. I learned the next week I dropped my dose down a little bit, or I think maybe I even started doing it 4 days a week right off the back. But I remember I had to adjust because it was just way too much. So yes, just be careful with that. Now, there's other microdosing protocols out there that you can look up, but these are the two main protocols that I remember, and that really all you need. But they're going to help you out a lot. They really are. They're great for stimulation. And what's great is like once you kind of get out of that area of, needing them for mental health, or, you start feeling better, you're feeling more happiness, more joy in your day-to-day life. You're, everything's a little bit more vibrant, and you get to the point where, you feel solid, you can always kind of switch your intention over and, take it a little bit further. Like, let's, what's that project you've been wanting to finish or start? Or maybe you want to just start becoming a little bit more assertive in your daily life, or, you know what I'm saying? Or maybe that pain management. So those things are huge. Like, if you want to heal some pain in your body, like, all right, I want to use this to ease my back pain. And it's almost like the mushrooms are smart. It's almost like they're an entity. They're alive and they are present, and they're listening to you, and they do really help you out. And another thing I want to say is that I may sound like I'm hyping this up quite a bit, that it's like this miracle drug, this miracle thing, but I just want you to realize that this was my outcome and this was my experience of it, and not everybody's going to have that experience. Not everybody is going to enjoy this process. And this is not a miracle drug. I don't want you to think that mushrooms are going to cure your depression or cure all of your ailments. That they're not. They're going to guide you. They're more of a guide. They give you more insights, and they teach you things so that you can enrich your life more on your own. They don't just flip the switch for you. Mushrooms and microdosing is a tool. It's a tool to help you move forward with your life and do the things that you want to do. You know what I'm saying? So make sure that, you don't go into this with the expectations of it curing everything. And when it doesn't happen, then you're just really, you're really disappointed. Hope for the best, definitely hope for the best, but just make sure that these are a tool. They're not a cure-all by any means. Okay. Make sure that you're being responsible with this stuff. Mental health is very important to a lot of people out there. And, in this day and age, we got a lot of people out here trying to heal. We're trying to do better for ourselves. And we just want a better world for everyone around us. These are things that can help lift our spirits, lift our souls. And, when we are our best selves, we positively impact those around us. And we're better people for our family. And, we're just better citizens of the world. All right. Well, I hope you really enjoyed this week's episode on microdosing. And please, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at cultivatingyou@gmail.com. You can instant message me on any of my social media platforms, prolific_pappy on IG, or cultivating you on IG, or cultivating you on Facebook. Okay. Hope you enjoyed. We'll see you next week, and much love. Peace.